Hey, it's Ben here from the Strength Factory, and today I'm going to be telling you how you can keep riding until you're 70 years old and maybe even beyond. I don't know about you, but I'm planning to live to at least 100, maybe even 110, and I want to keep riding for as long as I physically can. And at the age of 43, nearly 44, 70, all of a sudden it feels like that a little bit closer. And I want to make sure that I'm doing all the things I can to keep riding when I'm 60, when I'm 70, when I'm 80, and maybe even beyond that. So to help me and to help you do that, I've got 7.5 tips to help you be the best rider possible as you're getting older. The first tip is, like any goal, we've got to work back from what we're working towards. And quite simply, if you want to be fit and strong and riding at 70, then what you do in your 60s, 50s, 40s and 30s, they all have an effect. Because if you want to be fit and strong at your 70, but you're overweight, weak and slow at 50, then it's going to be pretty hard to turn that round. So tip number one, you've got to get on top of this early. Okay, so if you're 30 or 40 or whatever now, and it feels like a million miles away, well, it kind of is, but your actions now at this age have a massive effect of what you're able to do in 10 years, in 20 years, and so on. It's a lot easier to maintain strength, fitness and mobility than it is to build it, especially as you're getting older. So take action and get on top of it now. Tip two to keep riding to your 70 is you've got to make regular payments into what I call your physical pension. Now this ties into the first one, but basically it's the idea, just like the pension that you may be paying into for retirement, that you need to make regular payments over time, and over time those payments compound and they grow so that you've got a good pension pot to retire on one day. The same is true with your health and fitness. And this is something I talked about years ago when I did a podcast about this on Downtime podcast, how to shred till you're 70. I'll make sure I put a link down there below. Basically though, what it's about is making those regular payments. So if you're consistently going to bed and getting good sleep, you're making a payment. Consistently drinking water, making payment. Consistently eating a balanced and varied natural diet free of processed food, you're making payment. Getting in the gym regularly, training, you're making payments. And all of these add together and compound over time, topping up that pension pot. Now what you need to do as well as topping it up is avoid dipping into it early. Let's say you go through a real bad period, get really stressed and you're not sleeping well. Oh, take a bit out of the pot. Drinking loads, take a bit out of the pot. Get overweight, take a bit out of the pot. Get injured, take a bit out of the pot. So it's all about trying to build that physical pension so it compounds and grows over time. The more you've got in there, the more reserves you've got, the more resilient you are, the more likely you are to be riding when you're 70 and beyond. Tip number three is you've got to build some muscle and some strength. Untrained people are going to lose between 5 and 8% of their muscle mass every decade after the age of 30. And if you already don't have much muscle, then that's going to be really devastating for your long-term ability to be a well-rounded human and a bike rider. So the answer is to do some form of resistance training, whether it's at the gym or with your body weight. Because when you do that, that muscle loss, that doesn't happen. In fact, the opposite can happen and you can physically build muscle. And I'm not talking like walking around like a massive bodybuilder. I just mean enough muscle that you could be a fit, strong, well-rounded human and the sort of human that can keep riding for 5, 10, 20, 30 more years and so on. So you need to get on top of that strength training. It is not optional. Before we do tip number 4, if you're finding this useful and interesting, head down to the description and click the link and you can get access to a free guide for over 40s riders. It's got 7 training tips in there that are going to build on the things we're talking about today, including a load of exclusive exercise videos, and it's all free. All you need to do is drop your email in. Right, back to the tips. Tip number 4, now this one is easier said than done. Avoid big injuries and time off. And look, I know mountain biking can be dangerous, accidents happen, but what I'm saying is you just need to make good decisions. And mostly I'm looking at the men here because sometimes we get carried away, we get peer pressured and ego takes over. So if you're the sort of rider who struggles and always gets bucked on small tabletops, then I suggest that you don't ride big tabletops. Or what I really suggest you do is get some coaching to get confident before you move to that next step. The real problems that I see out on the trails when I go to bike parks and things like that, and when I watch Pink Bike Friday Fails is people riding things that are really clearly beyond their skill grade. And I'm not saying you've got to be boring and take no risk, and I'm not trying to make it elitist, but you can just see all these people who don't have the fundamental riding position and they're riding off drops and they end up in the hospital. If you end up off the bike for 6 months having knee surgery or with broken collarbones and stuff like that, so all of a sudden you're weaker, you're slower, you're less mobile, you're less motivated, maybe you put on weight, and now, unless you get right on top of it quickly, that cycle begins, that decline begins, and before you know it, oh, you don't go riding as much because you can't keep up with the group and so on. It's really important to have fun, but make good decisions to try and avoid those big injuries and time off the bike. Tip number 5 will be no surprise to my long-term subscribers and viewers, and that is to focus on and develop your aerobic fitness. Now, your aerobic fitness is that low-level fitness, those easy miles, those base miles that really build the foundation of your fitness. I'm not going to go into the details of how to do it now. I've got a link to a video up here that was really popular that will tell you exactly what to do. But if you want to be healthy and if you want to keep riding for the long term, then you've got to keep doing that aerobic work. Tip number 6, don't let yourself get all like stiff and hunched over. I'm joking a bit, but actually when you think of old people, rightly or wrongly, that's kind of what you think of, that like hunched over, like the street sign that's warning you about old people approaching and stuff like that. It's quite simple. You've got to look after your mobility and you've got to keep moving. So if you do a sedentary job, if you do a job that you're over a laptop and a computer all the time, or your phone obviously, then you've got to do something about it. You've got to move regularly, you've got to do mobility work, you've got to do some yoga, whatever it is. You need to prevent yourself ending up as this like hunched over caricature of an old person, because barring a few like horrible things aside, it's largely optional. You know, how you are as you get older is down to the things that you do, which really is the theme of this whole video. If you want to be able to move freely as you get older, then you need to move freely now. You need to look after your mobility, you need to stay active, you need to avoid being sedentary, you need to get on top of it. Tip number 7 is surrounding yourself with the right people. And again, this may be a bit easier said than done, but if you're the only one in your group of friends who cares about their health and their fitness and keeping riding and keeping strong, and all the rest are like vaping and drinking beers all week, then it's going to be pretty hard. If your partner or the person you live with or your family aren't supportive as well, and if they're not focusing on their health and fitness, then this is also going to be harder. So for your sake and the people around you, get them on board as well. The more people you've got around you with that same mindset, the less like devil on your shoulder there's going to be, the less temptation, and actually it's going to become supportive where you can all work together. If you don't have that already, then there's loads of communities, both online and face-to-face. Maybe you find a riding club. Certainly in the village where I live, there's a group, probably must be in their 70s, and they're out on their road bikes every single week, rain or shine, and they're out there ending at the village cafe. And I look at that and I think, that is awesome. It would be cool if it was mountain bikes, but it's still awesome. And that is how I want to be living when I get to that age. So surround yourself with positive people with that same outlook, and it's going to do wonders for your long-term approach to being strong, fit and healthy. Finally then, tip 7.5, the bonus tip, which actually is the tip because it governs all of it, is just to be consistent. And I know that this is a message I'm always talking about, and it's not that jazzy, not that easy to sell because everyone wants quick fixes, but all the things I talked about, you need to do consistently. It's as simple as that. Fitness, strength, mobility, moving, just focusing on your health isn't just something we do for January or for a few months or for a year. It needs to be a lifetime habit. It's as simple as that. So look, I hope this has been useful. I really hope there's something you can take away to help you to keep on riding until you're 70, 80, 90, 100 years old, okay? At which point, drop in my DMs, give me a high five, say thank you. I'd love to hear from you. On that note, if you've got any questions, drop them in the comments below and I promise I'll get back to you soon.